and a very warm welcome to moneycontrol.com. We are less than a month away from the budget. So we have with us the Disinvestment Secretary, Mr. Tuhin Kanta Pandey, to take us through government's disinvestment agenda. It's been one of the key planks of the Modi government to disinvest and bring in more privatization in the sector. And the man in charge for steering this entire process has been Mr. Pandey. Pandey, thank you so much for joining us on Money Control. Let me begin by asking you: we are barely a few weeks away from the budget. What's the what's the target looking like for you? How much have you accomplished? And going forward, what's the pipeline looking like?
We really look at disinvestment receipts. That's about 32,000 crore. And if you look at the dividend receipts, that's another 36,000 crore. So overall, I think we are 67,000 crore already. And of course, we have 3 months to go.
Okay, so let me get to the IDBI divestment. The government has come out and said that there's been a lot of interest from domestic and foreign institutions acquiring stake in IDBI. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What are these institutions? How many expressions of interest have been have come in?
See, our transaction advisor has informed us that there has been a good response. We obviously, as per our process, don't reveal names and the number. That's a part of our bidding process. But suffice it to say that we have got a response and we are now moving to the second stage.
Okay. Well, Money Control, my colleague Ashwin Mohan had broken the story that Emirates, NBD and Fairfax Group have expressed interest. I know that it's difficult for you to reveal the names, but can you tell us if we're on the right track?
No, as I said that I don't confirm or deny because that's for the media to speculate. On our part, we actually don't reveal the names and the numbers at this stage.
Okay, but you are happy with the response that IDBI has got in, because this is really on the stage for privatization in the banking sector. Something it was a very ambitious target that was set by the government.
I'm happy because also the fact that this is quite a unique transaction for the first time and in a banking sector, banking transaction on a competitive bidding process. And we were able to do it, through road shows and through back and forth with our regulators. In this case, two regulators are involved, C and RBI. RBI is the financial regulator, which is important. And we have worked out, this expression of interest documents in consultation with RBI, give as much clarity in the beginning as possible, because any competitive bidding process would require that as to who would be in and what will be the conditions and what will follow, and also that the fact that the RBI also agreed to do the fit and proper test right in the beginning, so that we don't get to any difficulties in future. So these qualified interested parties would be taken to for that test in RBI, and only thereafter we will open them to the due diligence stage, which is where we take them to a virtual data room where they could look at and share the draft definitive documents with them and take their inputs. Well, that's the stage we would only take them only once they pass the fit and proper test from the RBI. So that will bring certainty before the financial bidding.
Okay. Can you take us through the qualifying criteria for the bidders?
Well, I think the qualified criteria has been there in in the EOI documents in terms of who could participate, and the net worth criteria and other criteria, consortium criteria in case they want to go to come forward as consortium. So all that has been in detail mentioned in our EOI documents, which are incidentally are on website.
Okay. All right. By when are you expecting? What are the timelines that you're working with for IDBI are we expecting to close the stake sale this financial year, not as in 23-24?
Yes, I think we should be fairly advanced in terms of our, you know, uh, near closing in the first half of next financial year. But along with that, that we have fit and property, some time will be taken, and then there'll be a due diligence time. About 3 to 4 months would be necessary there out there, and before they will be right for financial bidding.
All right. I want to ask you, how different was this process for IDBI? Because this is the first such transaction in the banking sector where you've invited bidders. How different was it from the other, divestment that have been carried out?
It has been quite different because the first of all is actually the criteria. Who all can participate in this? Is the banking is a regulated industry, and banking license is involved. So we need to align the whole thing with the banking regulation, which also means that the corporates and the corporate NBFCs were not allowed to bid in this case, which normally, in the other cases, that's where the capital actually comes from. Here, the banking capital has to come in terms of non-corporates and not the corporates. Then there are, the second issue is that, as you know, the banking industry, it also their voting shares are, capped at 26% as per the Banking Regulation Act, which is again very different from in other industries where actually it is proportionate to
Mhm.
the share. There is also a different corporate governance model in the banking industry as per the RBI, which needs to be followed, which again means that their consortium also had their own different challenges. In this case, the way the private equity could participate in a consortium or otherwise. And I think where we have brought in the clarity, because there was issue that so many consortiums would actually not be possible in case we would restrict it to you know the plain 15%.
Mhm.
So I think that exceptional powers of RBI, which are already there, were
Mhm.
used in order to make it possible that even at a 60% could be singly signing in come in. So the funds are involved. Normally the funds are also allowed in other transaction. In this case also, but there, again, how the funds will operate in a banking sector, that was made clear. The fact that if you have a bank which is bidding for it, in that case, there would be a mandatory, uh, you know, there could be an element of mandatory merger because only one license would be used. So
Right.
that would also be because normally that was quite stated because there is also an issue of facilitating that merger, which we have undertaken to do so.
Mhm.
So I think all these things are making it a, and also the fact that there's a competitive bidding process is happening for the first time. Normally, many of the time, in the banking industry, either they have taken the license or the capital other promoters have come in order to save distressed banks. But in this case, that was not the situation. It is a voluntary, price discovery process for the best price of our shares, both us and LIC. And
Right.
also that we have two promoters involved, the government and LIC, and doing it in tandem. And so a lot of clarity had to be given post disinvestment, how what will be the respective roles.
Sure. So, what will be the respective roles? As in, how would the post divestment structure look like?
The post divestment is very clear that eventually, both government and LIC would like to exit. That is what the strategic disinvestment is for, basically. But the timing of that will depend upon, how we sort of take the upside post disinvestment.
Mhm. What are the when you say you're looking at getting the best price for your share in the bank? Any price band that you're looking at, any
No, it's a
valuation?
price. It's a price discovery process. Usually, it's a bidding process which yields the best price to our mind. Our
Mhm.
reserve price is an internal exercise for us, which will do it only post financial bids, only to assure that at least we will have a benchmark price which would have to be, available, right?
Okay.
But
So after,
eventually, it's a
mhm,
discovery of best price through competitive bidding process.
sure. So there's no benchmark that you're working with right now
No,
that you feel.
benchmark reserve price will be arrived at subsequently. At this
Okay.
moment, I think I would like the bidders to put their best foot forward.
So, okay. You like the bidders to put their best foot forward. Okay, fair enough. So, does this set the stage for other banks to be privatized as well? Ms. Sitaraman had said in the budget that two other public sector banks will be privatized. There will be an insurance company that will be headed towards privatization as well. Do we see that happening? What's the pipeline looking like for the next financial year?
As far as DIPAM is concerned, we actually follow up on what are the approvals that we have got from the cabinet.
Mhm.
So, I mean, for the others, I think that you better address that issue to Department of Financial Services.
Mhm. Sure. So no, we don't have a sense of what your can we get a sense of the priorities of DIPAM post IDBI now that IDBI has taken off? What are the other companies that we would be looking at?
Now, we have several ongoing transactions that we will carry it forward. And again, I would encourage you to go to the website, and we have several of these transactions which are at different stages.
Mhm.
Some of them are past EOI, some of them the EOI has been issued. We are awaiting. IDBI, for example, got the first round of bids and we moved to the second stage. So there would be also for Concord, we would be again working. We are working for an expression of interest now. Now that the policy on land lease has been made clear by the railways in October.
Okay. Do we see a more conservative target being set, Mr. Pandey? Because subsequently, that's a trend we've seen in the budgets. It started off with a 2 lakh crore target 2 years ago. It scaled down to a little above 60,000 crores. So, do we see that? Do we see a more realistic target going forward?
I think one of the points has been the last couple of years. We have to keep in mind that we have really been working. The budgeting has been under extreme uncertainties. In the last 2 years that we've been talking, in fact, both 1920, 21, and 22 budgets, a budget followed by a major cataclysmic events. Some of apart from COVID pandemic, we did have the issues like the Ukraine crisis, and we did have also several inflation-related Fed Reserve and other central banks related issues because of the Ukraine crisis and so on. So I think this is one part of the whole thing. Second, we have to really look at it is that oil industry, for example, they went into a lot of upheavals, and one of our major transaction that couldn't go through despite best efforts at that time because of the external circumstances. So I think market always plays a role. We of course have done considerable amount of disinvestments post 2014. More than 4 lakh crore equity has been diluted in different transactions. So obviously there is also a point that in residually, less would be available once we have divested the shares. Nevertheless, a certain budget target is arrived at, and we do our best to do that. Of course, subject to the market conditions. So the disinvestment is purely is not something like a law or something or where it's like a tax where everything is to be paid. It's dependent on several circumstances, and those circumstances when they materialize, then we are able to achieve. Our best effort would be to achieve whatever target Honorable Finance Minister sets for us.
Sure. So, what is the sense that you're getting in the markets, even with IDBI? We did see the deadlines getting revised on a few occasions. Do you see that there's an appetite in the market right now for investing in, government-owned companies and big stakes?
No, I think uh, there are divestment transactions we keep doing depending upon the conditions and there. Besides, we also our companies keep on giving dividend. We have a consistent dividend policy, and in fact, they make profit, they give dividends to the shareholders, not only to the government but also to all of the minority shareholders that are invested there. And that's another capital management role that they plays. Both together, we try and to not only generate resources but also to really enable reforms in the form of privatization, which would actually achieve the economic potential of these enterprises.
Sure.
Which the government had some time not able to do. Government is, beset with several priorities, several demands, and obviously it's not possible for government to always keep on, uh, you know, having spare resources for the businesses to grow, which many a time can grow much faster if they are privatized.
Right. So, we had the pandemic for 2 years. Right now, there is a global recession that's facing us. So, but the sense I'm trying to understand is that, do you see a turn in the sentiment when it comes to investment, or do you still feel that the investment sentiment is a bit subdued right now?
The investment is also quite contingent also on the particular transaction because it depends upon which investors are interested in what. So I think the fact that we have been able to complete certain transactions and certain transactions we are going to complete in terms of privatization. In case of market sales, also, from time to time, we do have wherever we have equity, we have been able to list companies. For example, LIC was listed under adverse circumstances, but nevertheless, that opens up companies to better corporate governance following listing. So
Mhm.
those are several listings have taken place over the last few years.
Sure, that's right. Ms. Pandey, I have to ask you, union is such a tricky question, right? Tricky business when it comes to government-owned companies. We had it at Air India. It's everywhere. How are you navigating that minefield? It's a very complicated process, and I'm sure it's a concern that maybe investors have also raised.
This is a lot of is there a teamwork because we have to work very closely with our colleagues in other ministries. We have a system of interministerial groups, and there is a core group of secretaries in disinvestment headed by cabinet secretary, and then we have a group of ministers called alternative mechanism to take certain decisions, which the CCA has delegated to them. And I think this process is we've been able to do a certain amount of capacity building in the meanwhile to learn and do things. And, uh, you know, of course, we have to grapple with the complications in transactions. For example, in case of non-core assets, we have to undergo taking up demerger. But then over a period of time, for the last 2 years, we have been able to hone up our regulatory systems and our enabling thing for the strategic disinvestment in terms of capital gains law, in terms of law on stamp duties, in case of for demergers, in case of, for example, SEBI regulations, in case of, for example, SCRR rules, some of that which would really enable and some of those obstacles that are hindrances or difficulties that we might face will be easier going forward. But nevertheless, every case is unique case, and we have to take it up accordingly.
Right. I also do want to talk about how have you simplified the process, because ease of doing business, ease of investment is a big point with everybody, with all the investors. If you could just quickly take us through some of the key changes that have been brought in by the government to ease investments and to ease the whole process of picking up strategic stakes in government companies?
But in our process, for example, is quite benchmark any globally best practices in terms of the level playing field that we provide, the clarity that we want to give through our PIM and EOI documents, then our transaction advisors and other advisors are appointed on a on an competitive bidding basis. We got some of the best advisors. We have also a system of committee processes which we work as a team, and the fact that we have been able to do several transactions, there is a greater capacity in the government system now to do it these kind of processes, and then we have as I said, that system of reserve pricing after competitive bidding so that nobody gets a clue of it. So we've taken on board some of the process, and we have got an external monitor, independent external monitor in our system, very eminent people who have actually vetted our process, say that whether this process is fine, and this a process of valuation, a process of, for example, going through this committee processes and the way we deal with this. In many cases, things we keep it at arm's length with the government so that it doesn't come to us. And transaction advisors, they deal with a lot of issues so that, the bidders are free to interact with them without. And some of the fact that I've told that we maintain confidentiality till we have arrived at this particular process so that these kind of commercial deals are possible.
Okay. When were these changes brought in, Mr. Pandey? Have they been brought in the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, in the last the major change we have brought in October 2019, but we
Okay.
have also done subsequent changes where we are able to, as we have learned things, and we have been able to do that.
Which is the change that was brought in October 2019?
I think this very clear multi-layered decision-making mechanism of what IMG can do and how will the CGT will do and how the AMs will do and what kind of delegations will do. Because it is a very complex decision making which
Absolutely.
happens all the time, in order to see up the things.
Okay. My last question, this is for all the investors who are going to be watching this interview. What is the message that you have for them? You are, the key person steering this entire process. What can they expect from DIPAM, and what is the message that you'd like to give them?
No, I would say that our we are working for a calibrated decision making, calibrated disinvestment process, keeping in mind also the needs of investors and this, with a clear mind that is a growth of enterprises and the economy that is very clearly in our mind.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey, and we wish you the very best. We look forward to interacting with you post the budget. Thank you so much.